with the Joyce Bala Mukhtari. She is special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama. Hello, Madam.
Hello.
It's great to have you here.
Good evening, Madam.
Good evening, Madam. Looking, as always. I think we should start with congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
My goodness, just today.
Yes, Madam.
Another master's. My
yes,
goodness. I mean, where do you find the energy? Teach me.
This one happened purely by accident. But it also taught me many lessons. It gives, a great opportunity to meet new people, younger people, do something refreshing. All my life, I've only just been a lawyer. Both master's degrees I have already are all in law. It was time to do something different. And I think that communicating all these years and all these months, it's time to just find out just what other people who are experts actually do. Why? There's so many communications people who are now lawyers.
True.
Even some of them prefer being lawyers even to being communicators. Exactly. So I think that there's something in a certain cross-fertilization of ideas and knowledge. And we are always learning. And I needed a small distraction. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to experience something different. And I had two choices. One was to do something in energy law at the University of Ghana. And I thought, why? You have something in maritime, you have something in international relations. Why do you want to go back and do something else in law? You might as well go and do a PhD. So do something that you've never done before. And I think that I didn't just pick about, like strategic, whatever, planning or marketing or public relations. I picked development communication. I think it's something that is different, interesting. And I did my research on the Right to Information Act. Yes, so I still had a little bit of the law.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yes. It was good, it was fun.
So something to find away time, and you went and did a master's.
Yeah. I needed a distraction.
A little distraction.
Tiny little
see why we are learning from you.
Oh,
no. You see why we are learning from you.
Try and finish.
It's very easy
to stop at something because Jenny, what am I going to do with it?
Right.
But it wasn't easy. There were times when you see the homework and you want to stop. You wake up in the morning, you have 1,001 things to do. Then at 4 they tell you it's time for class. But I was so happy today when I met all those young girls and men, and everybody was excited that despite all the complaints and all my moaning and complaining, at least we managed to get it out of the way. I think it was a great experience.
Congratulations. Congratulations. You keep inspiring us and keep going. So today you have a master's in, help me out, development
communication.
That's right.
Yes.
Fresh today.
Very, very fresh.
Today now. Fresh.
Right to one.
And I also have to say thank you that right from there you are here. Thank
Only
you
will do that to me.
Thank you.
What can I do? When Madam calls, you have to come running. Hey,
thank you.
Madam owns a whole
conglomerate. Thank you.
Of media outlets. Who am I? So I'm here.
Thank you so much. Well, on the back of inspiration, and looking up to you and all of that, let's just briefly touch on the running mates. We understand that she's being outdoored next week.
Yes, on the 24th.
Okay, on the 24th.
24th at 4 p.m. at the UPSA auditorium.
24th of April.
Yes. Please,
okay,
yes,
at the UPSA.
Yes. I would rather describe it as a formal presentation of John Mahama's running mate for the 2024 election. Yes. So we literally like an unveiling of sorts. Have her meet the good people of Ghana and the people in the world. Tell us what she has in store for all of us. Speak to the nomination. It is actually a very, very historic event. He didn't just nominate her in 2020. He has actually re-nominated her. She must have something that probably situates her in a way that all of us can appreciate why Mr. Mahama believes that he should re-nominate Nana Jane Pokuajima. So, I wasn't surprised when I heard that our opponents on the other side were actually literally forum shopping also for a female running mate. And Amma, there's something I tell people all the time, that John Mahama is a very, very, very deep thinker. Maybe because he's not so boastful, so noisy, or naturally very, all over the place. He spends enormous time thinking on and about all sorts of world issues, what he believes will make that difference that everybody expects. I remember many years ago, there was an article in The Economist that actually described the female leader of the 21st century. We were traveling somewhere. We spent that whole flight, I think, discussing that article. Sometimes I'm not sure whether it was right from there that maybe he made up his mind. Because you see, nobody helped Mr. Mahama with this choice. That one I can tell you for free. Nobody. Did he even have 2 or 3 other choices or females? I don't know. Did he consider any other female candidates? I really don't know. And I remember even when he was in office as president, he actually had a very good working relationship with Nana Jane. And I know many times when he would just reach out to her to consult about one thing or the other. And for some reason, she always had a good response. She always had under control. And if you've engaged Nana, even during the course of work, you realize that she's someone who is literally very, very well organized and likes to find solutions rather than, create problems. And one of my lasting memories of her as education minister was when she tried to fight this issue of truancy, for example, when they started all these efforts to remove the, that afternoon school business, because kids will go in the morning and then go in the afternoon and vice versa. All the kids were dropping out of school. It took enormous effort and discipline. We don't even remember what it was like to have the morning and afternoon schools. Who talks about it anymore? Some people are not noisy. They may not even necessarily be in your face all the time. But normally you would find that when they've been given a job to do, they will do it very, very well. Nana is pragmatic. She's a woman imbued with enormous wisdom. She likes to take charge and likes to take responsibility also. And then she's also a very honest and sincere person. I think that in all the categories of female leader that we all want to see, I'm sure that she's someone that all of us will look forward to seeing as Ghana's vice president. A few days ago, she gave an interesting response to a question that, people have raised questions about her age, etc.
I was just about to go there. Yeah. I was just about to speak to the criticisms that have come up, and, since her name was mentioned.
It was actually one of the very few criticisms, actually. And this one came up, and she said, I can work on other things. But how does someone work on her age? Nothing beats that. A very insightful response, a very concrete response, a response that nobody can argue with. So maybe you're given an opportunity at age 23, and someone says, or people say that one of the main criticisms is that you are too young. What can you do about that? Yes, you are young, but that opportunity has come to you. The best you can do is to take it and make the best out of it. And I think that is what we all do. I used to love a catchword, catchphrase when I was on campus. It was a Latin phrase, cap diem, means seize the day. So anything that someone gives to you, make the best out of it, I think. And I think that genuinely that's all that she's doing. And so we're all looking forward and hoping that this is the ticket that does it for Ghana. We want people who are modest, people who are humble, people who will serve us and serve in our interests, not necessarily for themselves. I don't see Nana, for example, wanting a private jet for any reason to go anywhere. I don't see Nana wanting to drive in a convoy of 10, 20 vehicles. I don't see Nana being a vice president who wants to spend the whole time telling lies and, telling stories that they don't believe in. Nana will never tell you that she knows where the CD or the dollar is, or that she can do something that she cannot do. But I know one thing, that it doesn't take an economist to be a vice president of Ghana. It takes a leader who cares, who understands what people really need, who appreciates what will work for the good people of Ghana, and one who will work to alleviate poverty more than anything. And who better than a female? So I think that is a good choice at this time. Look, we are currently borrowed to the hilt. We are literally being shut out of all the Eurobond markets. Yesterday, for example, there was a news item that all of the people who handle our finance ministry are actually at the spring meetings in Washington, D.C. So basically, you can tell that nobody cares what happens to this economy. They are obviously not interested in staying here to do the job. They really don't have anything to offer. I saw another item about a deputy finance minister, the minister of state, speaking to the fact that the IMF should rethink the special drawing rights for countries that are in need. So all we are doing basically is that we become a nation that just goes begging and asking for mercy. Nobody wants to do the heavy lifting because look, what is it the World Bank or the IMF is telling us? They said be more disciplined. They want fiscal discipline. Cut expenditure, cut wastefulness, cut luxury projects, cut also things that you don't need, for example. Why is that so difficult to do?
That's a question. Why is that? I mean, I hope that we'll get to it sometime, as the campaign goes on, because these are questions for me that should inform where we cast our votes and where we place our loyalty. So I really hope that it comes up strongly in the course of the campaign. Before that, though, there's something you just said. You spoke about the economy. In our recent, I can't even say past, in our present, the economy has become like the place of the vice, sort of. It wasn't like that in the past. I think that our vice presidents have always come, with some specialty contribution to the tickets. What do you think that Prof's is? What do you think her specialty contribution to the tickets of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is? It's certainly not the economy. So what would it be?
Let me say that, even in terms of the economy, Ama, if you think back to it, it's only after Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was running mate to Akufo-Addo that this became an issue. And it was also born out of the mantra by Akufo-Addo that there will be better managers of the economy, for example. And so the whole attention shifted largely to who was going to help me build back on the economy that he at the time deemed was struggling and needed a safe pair of hands. When he introduced Dr. Bawumia to us, what did he say? That he was a banker, he was a finance person, he was an economist. And that this is a man, and you remember even after that, there were huge fallouts. That Dr. Bawumia was actually an agricultural economist, if you remember. And that his thesis somewhere, I don't know whether it was in Zimbabwe or somewhere like that, had focused largely on agric economics across Africa. But that debate fell in line with all sorts of things, and it was actually in his interest really to promote his then running mate. 7 years later, Ghana has experienced the highest inflation. Ghana is currently in debt and unable even to redeem its debts. Ghana owes pension bondholders huge sums of money. They are unable to pay. Our poor, have gotten poorer. Much, much poorer. Livelihoods are worse off. Food inflation at its highest. Fuel prices at the highest they've ever been. That we can even hear a minister now ordering the Ghana Police Service to arrest private vehicle owners who increase transportation fares. The late Vice President to former President Kufuor was Alhaji Aliyu Mahama. I know he was a graduate of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where I believe he studied either building technology or something related to that sort of department or agency, for example. He was actually a businessman. Nobody associated him with the economy. The whole time that we've all known the late Aliyu Mahama, he was not an economist. He was not a finance person. Had he ever even worked with the state? I think he had a very short spat with the then, I think, AESL or something. I think immediately out of university. 2-3 years down the line, he had stopped and formed a company called Lidra. When we were kids in Tamale, it was actually one of the main construction companies around. I think over the years he had worked in the northern regions, he had worked in Greater Accra and parts of Ashanti region. Everybody knew him to be a businessman and of course a sports enthusiast, because at some point he had become a chairman of the Real Tamale United Football Club. He was never an economist. President Rawlings had had a few others, He had the late Aka, if you remember Kenzin Aka, who came from another political party and became his vice president. They had huge fallouts. Nobody knew him because he was an economist. Subsequently, we also had Professor John Evanzetta Mills, who was a lawyer and a tax expert.
Right.
He had been IRS commissioner and then vice president. Nobody touted his credentials, per se, as an economist. He was a lawyer, he was a technocrat, he was a great citizen of Ghana, he was well qualified to be vice president. So the story goes about Ghana's very mixed potpourri of qualified hands, of experts who have served at different times as vice presidents to very, very illustrious sons of Ghana who also served as presidents at one time or the other. Then you can look at it also from another perspective, for example. John Mahama this time is doing it differently. Look at Nana's credentials, her academic laurels, for example, her academic qualifications, for example. When has anybody ever come to the table of vice president with all these laurels behind her name? We had the late Vice President Emisa Arthur, for example, who was an economics lecturer, had become governor, full governor of the Bank of Ghana. And it was in the course of his time as governor, with Dr. Dufo as finance minister, and Professor Mills as president, and John Mahama as vice president, that Ghana sustained for the longest time in history a single-digit inflation. So it is still, the jury is out on whether or not what we need at any given time is an economist per se. In any case, what good is it to have an economist who is unable to deliver, who is unassertive, who has not contributed anything much to what he promised to deliver, whose whole claim to fame is that I am inconsistent, I'm a walking, talking contradiction, I say things I don't believe in and I do not mean, all I want is that I want to lead this country. We tried with Akufo-Addo, what did we get? Why do we want to try with anybody else? Let's select people who care about this country. All her working life, Nana has actually literally never lived anywhere. She's had brief spurts as a visiting academic, which is all part of the academic institutions that she served in, but she worked most of her life in the University of Cape Coast. Then she becomes Ghana's education minister. I think that we've tried everything. Let's try a female vice president. Someone who is a mother, who knows how to nurture, for whom empowerment or the empowering has become almost synonymous with her name. She led a very public university for a very long time. So far, I haven't heard that she didn't do it to the best of her ability or that she didn't do it as we expected. Indeed, if you remember, immediately after Nana's ascension to that role, many of the public universities now are also led by other women. I think that she must have done something right and held the door open. So who knows? After Nana is sworn as Vice President of Ghana, think about it. Maybe many other women will now be bold enough to come out and stand up confidently to contest in their own right. Like we saw Mrs. Rawlings do with her political party. I think we saw B.J. Jokwenuku also.
Yes.
But the NDC is actually the party to reckon with. It is a party waiting to form the next government. So unlike all the other smaller political parties that have actually experimented with female leaders and candidates, I think that this is the surest bet to Ghana actually receiving its very first female vice president. And I wish them both very, very well.
Very well.
I must be very, very honest that we are on the verge of making history. We can only wish them well and pray that everything goes well and look forward to a different kind of leadership where they will complement each other, where they will work for a common good. Why? If you go to other jurisdictions, the qualifications of presidents have never been important, to be honest. As president, you can engage any number of brilliant experts. You have all the expertise available to you. You can tap into the knowledge of other presidents from other countries across the world. Margaret Thatcher said that to be prime minister is easy because every morning you have the best coming to brief you on just about any subject matter. And so knowledge really, per se, is overrated. I believe that Nana is well qualified, and I think that we should all deem it an honor that at this time she's been nominated for this role. And John Mahama is one of those. I mean, think about it. How many presidents you have that even in their day as president is able to author a book that is translated in so many languages, that actually has become a literary reference book for many institutions of learning, and continues to add on to his, literally expanding his territory as he's gone along. I mean, look at all that he suffered even in his day as president and even since he's been out of office, but he continues to chalk so many laurels, and recently has actually been adjudged as one of the most recognized presidents that Africa has ever had. And I'm happy that he told the world that when he's sworn into office in 2025, he has no doubt that he will do an even better job than he did before. I think that is what we are all looking forward to.
Absolutely. This is my last question on this one, and this would be a criticism that keeps coming up. The fact that, is it really necessary to outdoor? I mean, we know her, she's been the running mate, from the last election. Why do we need to sort of outdoor? And it's almost like it's redundant. She's already known, she's already working, she's already, in public engagements. Why do we need to outdoor?
Well, I would say one thing, and I think somebody asked me this question not long ago, where it appeared that literally, even in the aftermath of 2020, she's basically stayed all through. I've never even seen that happen before. Most often than not, you select a running mate, things don't go your way, everybody goes their separate ways, you know what I mean? And then people just get back to normal and do what it is they've always been doing. But for some strange reason, Nana has almost become like the real shadow vice president. I mean, deputizing from Mahama when he's unavailable, attending meetings, attending functions, festivals, literally attends most meetings with us in the office. And even recently I said to TZ that, she's always become like a Ochami in the house, because whenever we have all these guests and we receive them, she'll welcome them. She sits in on all the meetings. She actually chairs some of the functioning, committees of the party and all of that. Has worked very actively with the Manifesto committee, for example. Look, Amma, I think that history actually favors those who meet it when it's required. I think that John Mahama sees in Nana somebody that he can trust, someone he can work with, someone he's comfortable with. And I think that I get the same impression from Nana where he's concerned. And I am looking forward to them both working very, very hard to improve the lot of our country.
Is the ceremony necessary? Why are we doing the ceremony again? I think it's the biggest criticism right now. That why another outdoor? She's already been outdoor.
No, what does the ceremony take away? It don't take anything away. If anything at all, I think it would actually just enhance her stature. It would show to people what she really has to offer. It would also be a way that for those who have not encountered her or heard about her, and then remember that there's always a need for you to introduce individuals at different times. It's almost as if you are reinventing the wheel, almost. But even as you're reinventing the wheel, you're also presenting. Political parties always want opportunities to showcase what they have to offer for the country that they want to run, or they want to administer, or they want to rule. I think that the opportunity is also for her to outline why me at this time? Why should Ghanaians buy into this ticket because of me? Why should anybody even care that John Mahama has renominated Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman? These are the questions that I think that this formal presentation will be answering. It is why I keep saying that word outdoor for me sounds, excuse me, blasé. But maybe in political parlance, that's what we are used to. I think it is actually more or less a formal presentation.
A formal presentation.
Then immediately after that, you both become partners on the ticket. I think that is what it really is. Because at that ceremony, you don't just introduce her. She also makes a statement.
Right.
It's the first time she gets also to address the good people of Ghana in her own capacity. First and foremost, as a citizen of Ghana. Subsequently, as an individual. Thirdly, saying, I accept this nomination. Enormous as the responsibility sounds, enormous as the work may be, challenging as the campaign probably will be, what I expect is to contribute my quota to ensure that Mr. Mahama is successful and is sworn into office in January 2025. I think that it is more for us to experience and hear what Nana Jane has to offer in her supporting role for John Dramani Mahama.
In other words, you know, as voters, as Ghanaians, this is for us.
Oh yes,
this is for us.
Absolutely.
You know, it's you know, a way of saying that we are not taking you for granted.
No, we shouldn't.
Here we are, another opportunity for you, right?
People are very, very jittery right now. There's enormous anxiety in our country. There's uncertainty about our indebtedness. There's high unemployment rates. There's lack of jobs and access. Look, everybody's a perennial student. You understand? I mean, I meet people who are like, I met a police officer today. He says, Madam, this is my 6th master's degree. I thought, oh, wow. You know, think about it. So people do need to find solutions to all the challenges that we actually have. We don't want too many, you know, talkatives. I think the noise is simply too much. Too many hollow and empty promises that don't mean anything to a lot of people who are making them. I see John Mahama as a very credible individual, a man that we can trust, one who says what he believes in. And you know, all his life, he's lived here, basically. In the last 10 years, he's been farming on a very large scale, rice and maize, name it. And he takes all of us to the farms. He has conversations about the farms with all of us. He actually wants to make the northern parts of Ghana to literally reinvent this whole notion about us having a real food basket. Don't forget that even our buffer stocks have been currently completely depleted. Everybody is struggling to find maize. Our government blames it on Russia and Ukraine, but even in those countries, they're not looking for grains to eat, you know. So I think that he stands very, very tall, a very good example of a man who believes in Ghana. I am a farmer myself. My father before me was a farmer. I encourage all of you to join me to make our Greek attractive, to make our Greek sexy. In the 24-hour economy, I want to create a value chain that allows for all of us to export beyond what we've always done and then keep the best part of it here at home so that we can all survive. I think that anybody who believes in Ghana to this extent deserves to be given an opportunity to run or administer this country. And why not? So he needs a very strong pair of hands, and Nana presents that fantastic opportunity.
Right, right. That takes us straight to building the Ghana We Want tour. I mean, who better to talk to about this than you? How has the tour been so far, generally?
Oh, genuinely, Amma, it's been fantastic. It's almost as if we haven't stopped touring the country. And it's taking us about almost 6 months, almost, to do 16 regions. And he just came back from the Northeast region. I think that all in all, these tours have been very, very successful. Look, Ghanaians are convinced that on the basis of rampant corruption alone, this government, led by Akufo-Addo and Bawumia, ought not to be in office. We must elect a new set of hands, a new set of faces to take us to the next level. Secondly, if you look at in terms of our economy, on finance, for example, I believe that they've performed abysmally with the highest inflations, with our banks collapsing. Everybody owes somebody in the state environment, everybody. All the state institutions are literally collapsing. Listen to the Public Accounts Committee reports and you shudder to think, is this Ghana? Huge state institutions raking in huge losses, investing in all sorts of things that will not bring back anything. Government doling out huge sums of money. Look, to move Ameri alone to the Ashanti region cost $35 million US. So I asked, how much is the cost of the whole plant? What are the components that are going to cost this much and why? Questions will be asked about whether this was actually a sole source or single source. You know, think about it. You know, corruption has become so endemic. And I heard a person in the media, a journalist, say a few days ago that greed has almost become like second nature to the persons who are in governments. They speak to these huge sums of money and there's no sympathy. There's even no empathy. They just talk. So you can tell that nobody really is currently running Ghana. Nobody wants to do anything differently. Things are spiraling out of control and we are watching. Everything is on cruise control. I think that Akufo-Addo is tired. I'm sure he knows that Bawumia is not the best person to lead Ghana. He has probably convinced himself that this is it, we are going home. So everybody is just watching. We need to find a way to rescue this country. We need to find a way to do things and do them better. Look, we have 16 regions. Go around the regions and see. The basic things that make a region are non-existent. Look at sanitation. The time when we have a 1% sanitation tax. When our president promised to make Ghana the cleanest city in Africa. Look at where we are, even in terms of all the perception indexes, even on media freedoms, for example. We're not doing too well. You know, people talk about the fact that the Constitution is a problem. But is the Constitution really the problem? If the Constitution gives you a leader a leeway with discretion, for example, how you use that discretion is actually very, very important. When you start to abuse that discretion, it is time for us to rein you in. That is why democracy is beautiful. Every 4 years you go out there and you select a new leader. If you are dissatisfied with the previous leader, you are convinced that they're not doing right by the good people of Ghana, you vote them out. I think the Ghanaians are all ready and adding that it's time for change. And I'm sure that everybody knows that come December 7th, this administration is going home. Because you see, look at our livelihoods. When Mr. Mahama said that he had fixed them, so what did you hear? Even at the last State of the Nation address, you heard the president literally goading and trying to, you know, make light of the fact that every opportunity was made to fix themselves. So the question you ask is that why would you go out there and elect a leader who makes light of everything that is important for you? Too many cronies, too much nepotism, too many aficionados. Sometimes it breeds enormous corruption. And I think maybe because of that, the president is unable to see clearly just what is wrong. Because there are too many people who are too close to him, who tell him a different story from what really pertains. And somehow I've observed that the president doesn't move around that much. Doesn't travel around the country that much. I think in the periods of the campaign, he moves around a little and that's about it. So there's very little that comes to his attention. He doesn't see the very raw hunger. I mean, we've seen photos and videos about the dams that were promised, the fact that they are not even fit for purpose. We've heard about the amounts of money that have been expended. How often have you seen the president inspecting any of those dams they promised to build, for example? The factories they talked about, we don't hear him talking about them. So basically, I think that genuinely, this government is completely out of touch. And I've heard Hobbs Nadoye and others, people who have drunk from the lake, who have lived in it before, they've come out to tell us that this is how bad it is. We have to believe them. And everybody believes them. People know that they are telling the truth. Why? Someone who campaigned and said that single source projects and everything will be on procurement basis and everything will be of a public tender and all of that. What has changed? 80% of government contracts were all single sourced. 80%. The only thing left is the other 20%. And means that those ones are not jobs that have been given out. Look at the story with SML, for example. So far, where is the KPMG report? So, I mean, look at the matter to do with the scholarship secretariat, for example. Are you not surprised? You went to school. Did they pay the tuition fees to you or into your private account? Did they pay the money for the accommodation that was provided by the institution to you or into your private account? I mean, you see, if you don't put in place checks and balances, even your own activities would actually generate more corruption. Why would you pay £15,000 into a student's personal account? Why would you do that? Nobody does that. Even the tickets that are given to us when we go out on scholarships, the tickets are paid for. And they are only sent to your inbox. So you can't take the ticket and say, for example, I'm going to amend it and take the money, or I'm going to sell it to someone because it's in your name. The flight is booked. Tuition fees are paid directly to the institution of learning or college of learning. You know, so it is almost as if now we have state-sponsored or state-sanctioned corruption. And everybody is quiet, everybody is watching. The president refuses to make the KPMG report public, and everybody is watching. The president tells you that, oh, I'm going to select someone to undertake this investigation. We are all waiting. The next day he comes and says, oh, I've cleared them. The president says, I've put my job on the line to fight galamsey. Then Ghana Water Company comes and says that we're polluting all the water bodies. They can hardly even have clean water to put into our homes, to serve, the country with good, clean drinking water. So what are we waiting for? What are we electing? The president told us that the Tema port was a mirage. Today we are being told that all the business that should come to our port is being taken where? To Togo, which has a free port, where there's no bureaucracy, where it's easier to do business. The port and all the investments that were made in it are not giving us the requisite dividends. What is the reason? We have heard about the Buankra Inland Port. That is a project that is actually on my heart, largely because I was then a very young legal officer at the Ghana Shippers Authority when that whole inland port idea was conceived of. The biggest challenge with that project was that there was no commensurate railway. Don't forget that Kumasi used to have a very active railway line, and you could go from Kumasi to Cape Coast, from Cape Coast to Takoradi on the Western Railway line and the Eastern Railway line. Over the years, very unscrupulous persons have literally taken over all the railway tracks. Most of the lands have been literally taken over by unscrupulous persons who have built also properties in and around the railway tracks. And so in the end, we had to redraw the railway tracks, get a new master plan. But also the reason why we wanted the inland port to be at Buankra in particular. The Otumfuo graciously gave the Shippers Authority 400 acres of land. They constructed an administration block on it, and then the next one was to create this whole inland port around it. Go to Mozambique. They developed a whole city around the inland port. Same for Angola when they discovered oil. So there was supposed to be a commensurate project in Ghana. Remember that all the landlocked countries actually take their cargo from the port of Tema and Takoradi. So if you now have a middle way between Ashanti region, which serves most of the northernmost parts that are closer to the landlocked countries, it's just more convenient for them, even if it is by road, for example. But at least this frees up the Tema port so that you can then receive other types of cargo instead of everything else coming there and staying. That our government does by way of even policies are always an attempt to sabotage the very purpose for which all these
instituted. It was instituted.
And I think these are bottlenecks that, we should be able to do things and achieve sustainable solutions. Why? The ports in South Africa, they went fully automated. It has never gone back. Just take your bill of lading, pay whatever duty is exigible, put it in a keyhole. By the time you come the next day, your cargo is ready for you to pick up. Why do we still need all these middlemen to clear cargo in our ports in Ghana? Unnecessary.
So do I take it that this building the Ghana we want tour, to an extent, and I'm picking bits and pieces from everything that you've been saying, was perhaps one to connect, to assess? Would I be right to say that? Because you mentioned inspection as well, and you've mentioned very broad sectors that often we don't sort of avert our minds to, but are clearly crucial. I'm learning so much from everything you're saying right now. So crucial. So I mean, would I be right to say that the building the Ghana tour, perhaps as a byproduct, is to connect?
Well, yes, it is to connect. It is also a journey of discovery. It is also one to engage. Because don't forget that normally on these journeys, you're not just talking to those who are converted. There are many on the side who would want to hear what you have to say. There are many people who also concerned. And if you remember, it was one of these tours that we even had that Komfanochi had run into trouble. The Komfanochi Teaching Hospital in the Ashanti region, for example. And then there was a need even for the Otumfuo to ask for residents to make some contributions so that there will be a refurbishment of that facility. It actually came up as a debate when we're in one of the regions and there was a hospital, I think, that they had come and commission when no job was done, nothing extra was done since Mr. Mahama left office, for example. So it led to this whole conversation about the military hospital that was being built in the Ashanti region that they've left. and refuse to complete. But forget that. If that facility comes on stream, what will it do? It will serve the good people of Ghana. And you know, I observe that this is just how the NPP tried very hard to erode the gains of the NDC. Think about the history of Ghana, for example. If you take Nkrumah, Achampo, and all of these people, most, if not all, public universities in Ghana that were added on after independence were mostly constructed by the National Democratic Congress. What this business of going around and renaming them is, I don't even understand. You heard the spat that developed when they tried to rename the Tamale Airport, for example. Why? Nothing beats the name Tamale Airport. It's actually an advert on its own. People will ask, where is Tamale? People see the airport and they know, okay, that's it. Think about it. Sometimes even names connote a certain history. Like, for example, Kotoka. If you know, there were times when people even wanted to change the name and all of that. But for some weird reason, most of our leaders have allowed it to stand. It may be a very stark reminder that we've had 3 failed republics and only the 4th one actually has been sustained for well over 30 years. Probably explaining why the Speaker of Parliament has taken upon himself to celebrate the sustainability of this longest republic in our history, in our 67 years of independence. You know, there's a way that countries build on their history. I think it's better to build on than to try to rewrite history. Yes. I think that is almost an error of justice of sorts when you try to create a certain impression. What is the point? What about the ones who will come after us? They must also be reminded of some of these things. So I want to see our leaders start to build on our history in a way that makes all of us proud of that history. What does it take to rename an airport facility? What does it prove really? So imagine that people didn't know that this Ameri thing was actually the same one that had been sitting there all along. Think about it. But we're told that this was actually procured through corruption, that they were going to investigate it, that people will go to prison for that facility. Today we are in a power crisis. You now deem it necessary that for the sakes of equity, you should move it. In the past, when we were kids, there were badges that were moving in and around the northern region, for example. That is how NEDCO was built. It was the badge that used to provide electricity. Then we had Akosombo in the other parts. And then, of course, Bui came on stream. All these things didn't help because our population has grown. We now have 16 regions. A population of over 30 million. Climate change is what has affected Akosombo. As for Bui, from what I gather, it actually never lived up to expectations. So there was a need to move away from these things to generate independent power. But the question is that, what infrastructure did we have to build upon? We had never taken this step before. Even if you won't give him credit for anything, considering you didn't contribute to any of the solutions that were found eventually, give him credit for thinking outside the box, for believing that the future in terms of power distribution is that we must do something outside of what nature offered us. When was the last time you saw a crawler with water levels in Akosombo? Because now, for as long as you can pay the IPPs, the lights will stay on. But we had never had such infrastructure. These were huge risks that they were taking. Like I said, when a vessel calls at a port where they know they're not going to go back with any huge cargo, the shipper will pay for the cargo in and pay for the empty vessel out. So naturally, the cost of your shipment will be twice the cost of other people who are in countries where there are huge shipments to take out and in. There must always be a two-way street.
To and fro.
So we must start to generate something that will be taken away. We used to have cotton. What happened to it? We used to have granules. What happened to it? We used to have even coffee. What happened to it? Now all we have is cocoa, and even that one, due to mismanagement. For the first time we are being told even that there will have to be a certain carryover of shipments because we don't even have enough cocoa to pay for what people have already paid for. Most of it is being smuggled out. We're told that we're going to partnership with Abidjan, for example. How come that they are still paying more for the farm gates of cocoa than we are doing? We took 10 million cedis to go and conduct an audit into construction of cocoa roads, left them all to waste. Today, where are those roads?
So, I mean, now I'll ask for, specifics on the tour, specifically. What's the feedback, that you took from the exercise? What did the people of Ghana across the 16 regions, say to former President John Dramani Mahama? How impactful would, this exercise be for the governance plan of...
You know that normally one of the key planks of any successful political campaign is a manifesto.
Manifesto.
Yes. So whilst we've been on these journeys, and this was something that the NDC started doing very beautifully, I think right from 2008, where they go around in a listening tour of sorts, sample views, pick up views, meet all sorts of different groups, etc., just so that you can piece together what it is that the people want. I'm sure you know, for example, the NDC has always had these very people-oriented manifestos. And so whenever there's a campaign looming, the first thing will be a tour of the entire country. And I must say something, that John Mahama has the sort of energy that I shudder to think where it comes from. The way that man can trek the length and breadth of this country, how well he knows the topology and the history of this country, how well he knows the road networks in this country and understands the roads and areas in Ghana, never ceases to amaze me. Listen to me. When you go to the mining areas, for example, apart from Galamsey, a lot of the road infrastructure that we left are exactly as we left them. The E-blocks, beautiful edifices. Even in the education minister's own constituency, you will see the furniture is literally hanging out of the building. And they've intentionally... Yesterday I watched the Honorable Kojo Ponkroma, who raised something that we had heard in many other places. A quest for affordable housing. And why Saglemi has been left to rot. And so yesterday, in trying to hide behind Saglemi to launch something else that they claim they are going to do and do very quickly, he mentioned that they were going to get some money and make Saglemi, put it in shape so they can give it out to people to use. And then mentioned some other ones that were left by former President Kufuor that were still not being utilized in a country like ours. You understand? So, look at the regions, the newly created regions, for example. Yes, they were done for political expediency as part of a political promise, etc. Yes, population censuses will determine that when the population goes up, you should increase the numbers of regions and all of that. But it also tells you that when you create a new region, some things go along with it. When the decoupling of Upper West and Upper East was done, out of the former Upper region, for example, they got administration blocks. They got the district assembly to go there and set up. They decentralized in a way that the administration points were up and running. When you go to a newly created region, apart from the pride people derive from having their own region created for them, what have they done in terms of developing those regions, in terms of the economy, in terms of industry, in terms of what they have? So Mahama has said something very interesting, that we used to have a situation where every region was known for producing and marketing something. Upper East in particular was known for producing what? Corned beef and meat products. They had the meat factory there, they had the tomato factory there. Look at all the controversy around monies that were secured by John Mahama to refurbish the Kwalugu Dam. Look at all the politicking and the propaganda that went around it. In the final analysis, the monies have been misapplied and nothing has been done. When Mr. Mahama said that the energy sector levy was one fund that should be protected to sustain our power supply, people thought he was joking. It has come to pass. The GET Fund was actually set up so that we could use those resources to develop educational infrastructure. Look, Amma, region after region, this is all we hear right across the country. It is not because I work for Mr. Mahama or a member of the NDC. People genuinely believe that Mr. Mahama cared about Ghana and that he was doing a better job. On the economy, for example, Ghana was posited, if you remember, that our economy will grow by at least 8% in 2017. By 2018, we had squandered all of that. Ghana has never been so indebted that we couldn't even pay or redeem our indebtedness. It has come to pass. They had come into oil because they had the 10 field had come on stream. They received in the very first few years over $200 million. Where did that money go to? For COVID, for example, they received huge sums of money from the IMF, from the World Bank. Various sources of aid came into the country. Where did all those money go? And yet till today, we are still paying a COVID levy. Why do you think in Ghana people practice tax evasion? Nobody owns up to taxes in Ghana. So Mahama has told us there must be a holistic reform of the current tax system. From the days of Professor Mills, nothing new has been done. We appear to be adding on, but we have not looked closely at a complete overhaul. As an individual taxpayer too, I think that is something we ought to do, and everybody talks about it. We also need to decentralize in a way that, look, our chiefs and traditional rulers have become very influential in their communities. They've also become largely very development oriented, maybe because they believe that politicians have not lived up to expectations. So they've actually decided now to make themselves what? Partners. Look at what Otumfuo has constructed in the Ashanti region, for example, to commemorate his jubilee as occupant of the stool. That's a laudable investment. Great for Kumasi. When people visit now, they go and visit the museum. There's also other things going on there. It's a great initiative. Many other people want to do the same. And on these trips, we visit a lot of these chiefs in their palaces. They talk about largely development and jobs. It is only on these trips you find someone who will tell you that they left university in 2019 and still don't have a job. So what is the future of such a person? You've heard what has happened, for example. Look at all our government institutions and agencies. Amma. Look at the amounts that they earn. To the extent that Cocoa Board actually buys iPads for board members. I was one of those that as a deputy minister, I never served on a board. I believe there was only one that we finally were put on, which was the Tema Shipyard, when we were trying to get some investors to come and take it off government. Even that one didn't work. I think it was myself, the then Deputy Attorney General, and a few others. But the negotiations didn't even go anywhere. So in the end, the shipyard was actually left even with the Port Authority. But imagine that you're a deputy minister. In our case, the Ministry of Transport had about 16 other companies. For most of Ghana's Club 100 companies, we're all part of the Ministry of Transport. I didn't serve on any of those boards. So it means that if you serve even on one board, what else do you need to do? You understand? So,
right.
And yet you have CEOs, members of parliament, across board. And yet at this point in time, it is the one time when most of these government agencies and institutions are making huge losses. Look at the judgment debt we are looking at in terms of Bankra, for example. Look, never underestimate the value of a modest leader. A modest leader. A leader for whom largesse is not attractive. In my whole engagement with Mr. Mahama, one of his most lasting qualities is his modesty. And I tell people that, look, if you work with Mr. Mahama and you genuinely believe in working for him, you must emulate him. Because he's not arrogant, he's not disrespectful, he is not rude, He is not someone who is interested in all the large things that excite people. Recently, he has a new toy. It is this very small electric car. And when you sit with him, Amma, he can go on about it forever. And the last thing I heard was that, don't worry, JB, I'm going to test it. I'll use it for a while and I'll give it to you. You understand?
Oh, dear.
Yes, little things excite him. Technology excites him. New things excite him. And he will use it himself. And so by the time he starts to even tell you about it, even you will be convinced. And so truly, when I walked into his compound, I said, oh, where is that this new vehicle? Then I walked and I said, oh, okay, this is it. I looked at the left, right, center. I said, okay. As soon as I sat in the car, he started regaling me with all the stories. Oh, they're going to come and give him a little solar panel. He can charge it for 8 hours overnight and he can go for 300 kilometers. Who goes around for 300 kilometers every day in Accra? He's excited about it. He's still using his small little Toyota cars all the time. He's happy with them. His palate is very simple. His lifestyle is very simple. But these days, whenever he has any small money, he's going to his farm. He's experimenting with all sorts of things. Because he's also expected this to become like, almost like a pilot. Let other people see what is possible. And so others will also emulate it. So when he speaks about industrial enclaves, he's serious about it. When he speaks to matters to do with agric, he's serious because he knows it can work. What happened to all the rice mills that he left behind? Look at the one in Tamale, for example. They couldn't even find rice to feed the farms because they couldn't find funding. Look at the shea butter factory in Bipe, for example. Why do you destroy others and then try to deceive people that you are building new ones? The Ada tomato factory was there. The starch factory was there. The Commander sugar factory was there. If there were challenges, why did you not just try to find the challenges and repair them?
Right. I mean, should we take these as indications, or pointers of what to expect from the manifesto?
I have no doubt in my mind this will probably be one of the finest manifestos ever. If the 2021 was adjudged as the most responsive, this one will be one that actually has Ghana's problems all sorted in one booklet. Let me put you on the spot.
So, in my estimation, I'm expecting something on the newly created regions.
Oh, certainly.
Okay,
yes,
so
certainly.
Something on the newly created regions.
Absolutely.
I'm expecting a lot on jobs.
Oh, great things on jobs, because
development.
That one is a huge security threat. On development, certainly. And he's told us
right.
that all the existing infrastructure that we've left and abandoned, instead of starting new ones, let's find resources to complete them. The Eastern Corridor Road, I expect that will be his first, in his first 100 days in office. Something must be done about that road. If you look at Accra, going all the way to Kumasi, by this time, at least we should have a good road from one regional capital to the next. That one should be seamless.
Sanitation
is a big factor, and he's told us that on sanitation, we must take a second look at decentralizing it. That we should find a way even to have our traditional rulers become partners in sanitation. And he's told us that anybody who will make DC or MCE, the sanitary conditions of your district will determine your continued stay on the job.
Oh, that's...
Yes. Because this time, look, Amma, Ghana is very dirty. Travel across the country. You go to some constituencies, you will marvel. You will literally marvel. The day we went to that KJTR market, you should have come there to see. And this is a market that is the talk of the whole world. And everywhere you get to, people are talking about what? A need for modern markets. The whole concept of markets have changed. Markets now have daycare centers. They have good toilet facilities. They have a small chips compound or a little hospital facility. They are big conglomerates. Look at how organized our markets, queen mothers are across the country. If you give them better facilities, imagine what they can do for the economy. Look, the Makwala markets and Manata markets you see, the individuals who operate better than banks, more efficiently than banks, more accountable to the association and its members than even the state to its people. And they do it effortlessly. I dealt with a women's group once, and they told me that there was a fire outbreak once, and because they had been doing this susu thing over the years, when that outbreak occurred, those who lost the most were given more contributions from that susu to rebuild their businesses. And Mr. Mahama has said it. And now I'm hoping that this is something Nana himself can champion. The women's bank collapsed, if you remember. It used to be somewhere my mom's road, somewhere around in Tessano. If we can restore a bank of that kind, that will be biased towards women-led businesses, women-owned businesses, developing women businesses. The World Bank and others are doing that beautiful now with these SME transactions right now. Doing amazing things with empowering women. Look, I had a case once, about 2 or 3 years ago, where there was a company that was in some parts of our regions exploiting women who were picking shea nuts. So when they come with the nuts to weigh, they will weigh less what the cost of Wellington boots are, the cost of a touchlight and protective gear. I'm telling you. So you take all that risk, go and weigh all that shea nut and get absolutely nothing because they gave you Wellington boots last week and you were unable to pay directly. So we are deducting it from this amount. We gave you touchlights, we gave you gloves, we gave you this, we gave you that. And these are women being exploited in their own communities.
Right, right.
So if we are able to create a fund that supports people like this, who is going to come there and come and exploit you in this manner? You see, there's also a certain fairness and equity that we must also worry about. Because you see, if you watch, our poor have gotten poorer. And this is science and research is telling us this. How do you close that gap? They must have better access to funding, affordable housing, access to water, good roads, basic amenities. Because these are all developmental milestones.
Absolutely.
Yes, after 67 years. Why should you go to any community where even water they don't have to drink? Then you tell them these dugouts are dams that you expect humans to drink from, when even animals will not drink from them. If you're a vegetable farm, how would you use those kind of dams to cater for that vegetable farm? You know, so it's been a very, very humbling experience.
Oh, I'm not even done. The perception indexes, you know, media freedoms. We will be hearing something about that, you know, from the...
He has already told us that we would... In fact, as for him, everybody knows. Look, every time... Recently, I told him, somehow you have to give him power of attorney. So we can go out there and sue some... He knows how we'll use it. That we will not apply any discretion. So he will not grant it. And he will tell me that, you know, in his capacity as a beacon of liberties and freedoms, for example, as a man who believes in democracy, if he starts using a very heavy hand of claiming reparable damages, for example, it will send a very wrong signal. But you see, it is a reason why the intolerance of our current leaders has become a stark difference between who Mr. Mahama is or how he operated as president and these ones. So there's something in that too. Secondly, note also that he has told us that there's portions of this constitution in the whole amendment process was started by President Mills, for example. Mr. Mahama came up with the white paper. People forget. He couldn't even get the majority in Parliament, remember, to even change or amend the election date. And then the then majority went to court. So he had his hands tied to his back. A few weeks later, he was out of office. Processes to do with constitution amendment and reviews take a very long time.
Right.
But what is it that the Ghanaians are upset about? Article 71 office holders. And I remember someone gave us a very good background to what the framers were thinking when they put these clauses into the constitution. It is very, very obvious that we didn't have as many people within that Article 71 at the time. Parliament itself, how many were they? This was even to encourage people to accept certain positions. When you hear the story about when Ghana tried to find the very first electoral commissioner, how they struggled to find a suitable candidate. Don't forget that in those days, these sorts of partisans will never find their way. Never, nowhere near the EC. It's not even possible. It would have been preposterous years ago. So these are all things that he's speaking, and that concern a lot of Ghanaians. People wonder, because it's almost a very unfair thing. So if you and I were to work all our lives and never fall under Article 71, there are some things we'll never benefit from. But of course, it's also very sensitive, because there are a lot of people in those categories who tell you they don't get anything else. They don't get the opportunity of the executive, for example, and they must also survive. But ask yourself, how many people were in these categories in the past as against what we have now?
Today.
What we have. But these are also the same people who have watched on as $58 million has been sunk into a national cathedral. And there's very little criticism coming from that quarter. So the question I should be asking is, so what? Anything the executive decides to do is allowed.
That's a sensitive one. Would we hear from, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, or from the campaign on this cathedral issue? It would be interesting to hear what his views.
Someone gave us a very interesting response in one of the engagements.
What his plans, would be for that space, and what's happening there.
What we need to do is first to focus on investigating how those monies were expended.
Right.
Very little authorization was given. Even some of the pastors we know have resigned because of that. The question is that, let's find out first how to recoup those monies from all these unscrupulous, corrupt people who have stood and taken us all, held us all ransom. We must first and foremost get that. And look, Ghanaians want serious accountability.
Oh, yes.
They want a more transparent government. They want, even for the first time, a fetter on executive powers because of how Akufo-Addo and Bawumia have behaved. Why? From boasting about being in charge of the economic management team to now totally disavowing that whole team and claiming that you were only of your advice was only persuasive and that you can't put. I mean, leadership is also about being what? Assertive. I won't use even the NDC. Let me use the late Vice President Ali Mahama. He was championing a campaign against indiscipline. He took that campaign very seriously. The time came, even all those documentaries were very synonymous with him. And even every time people saw him, all they saw was somebody who was ensuring that Ghanaians should be better disciplined. And I remember one of the videos had someone peeing on a wall or something of the sort. It was a very, very, strong campaign. You get what I'm trying to say? I remember there was a time when there was a very serious issue in office with Mr. Mahama as president. I know his then late vice president was totally against it. And he made his views very well known. Indeed, I think he even visited his boss to raise his, the reasons why he was not convinced that that should be the right decision. Think about it.
Right.
So nobody says that the vice president cannot be assertive. Right. If you don't agree with E-Levy, say so. I mean, say so and let people hear you, but they can decide whether they take it on board or not.
So I mean, we of course we appreciate an investigation into that. Everybody is looking forward to
Absolutely.
that. But beyond that, beyond the investigation, say we are done with the investigation, we've unearthed what the truth is. We've given Ghanaians what is owed them, what is due to them, in terms of accountability. But what do we do with the space? I mean, the whole point of politics is to win the election. Let's assume the election has been won. Yes. What are you going to do with the space?
You see, as for this one, I haven't asked the boss.
It's beyond your pay grade.
Like I said, I heard.
I knew when I was going to say that.
I take my Fifth Amendment very seriously. But I heard a group of Ghanaians who had also ideas. The best one was that it should become a teaching hospital as a monument or a testament to what ought never to happen again in the history of this country. And I heard another pastor who vehemently said he was campaigning against the location. That if you wanted to create a Mecca of sorts, go to virgin lands and use that as an opportunity or avenue to open up those places too. So for example, someone was actually asking me, Nigeria has Asio Rock, we have Peduasi. But he was totally surprised to see that the presidential office was right in the middle of town on a main or major road. So there have been also schools of thought. You know, Ghanaians are a very interesting set of
You
people.
won't give us an inclination in
Do
the
not have,
manifesto.
No, but why would the manifesto capture something to do with the National Cathedral?
I'm trying
That's
to
one.
box
That is
into.
above my pay grade. The NDC manifesto is going
But at
to
least
look
you've given us some
it will
indications
look at
and
the
we are
economy,
grateful.
we'll look at education, look at industrialization, look at how to better the lot of the good people of Ghana, how to just make it more bearable for all of us.
Right. One more. The corruption indices. We just finished with media freedoms. How about corruption?
Same.
Actually, this even falls under corruption.
Same.
Right.
But for corruption, why would $58 million be lying in that pit?
Right.
That's what it is. All single-sourced to friends and aficionados. Who else have you heard about who's won anything?
Right.
Even businesses want a change in government. Because lately, not everybody in business can get any job to do. It is reserved for just a few. Not many people at all. And if you know that 80% of government contracts are all what? Single source procurements. Tells you that there's enormous corruption even there. Look, as for corruption now, it permeates everything. It's everywhere.
Should we look forward to,
strengthening the anti-corruption institutions? Yes. Making sure that persons who work under you do not subscribe to such acts? Yes. Being more disciplined? Absolutely.
Investigations?
That one is a given.
Right.
Look, if we don't take the fight against corruption seriously, it will be a threat even to our survival in government. That one I know. If the stories we hear are to be believed, the amounts of monies in private hands are to be believed, then we have a very, very huge problem. Why? Even the least tale about corruption in this government. Look at how much we're paying to SML every month. And yet the IRS didn't even know about those payments. And this was supposed to be what? A quality assurance company, supposedly working hand in hand with the IRS.
That's reassuring, because when you listen to the general sentiments, of Ghanaians, considering how hard things are now, people are very interested in investigations and accountability of where the monies have gone. Where the monies have gone.
Yes.
Okay, now this then brings me something that you said earlier, something about us. Now, I think I forget the phrase, but my question really has to do with the things that has been done, the things that the NDC administration, the past NDC administration in government, did. And the fact that there's a lot of talk about, we didn't know, as Ghanaians, we didn't know that John Mahama built this hospital. We didn't know that John Mahama did that. There's a lot of talk on that. As we are getting into the political season, we are only a few months into, the main elections itself. What is the NDC doing? And I'm sorry that I'm asking you this question, but what is your office, so not the NDC, what's the office of the former president doing about telling us concretely what was done?
I'm happy you raised this question at a time when the very dodgy performance tracker has finally been put to rest. We tracked our projects in very concrete ways in the Green Book. It wasn't our first, it wasn't our second, it was actually our third. Indeed, at the time when that book was published, we were even told by ourselves and to ourselves that we didn't capture everything. But over the years, everything in that Green Book has been proven to have been correct. Today they boast about automation of the judiciary, automation of government agencies, of institutions. The e-governance project was started by the NDC. The laying of fiber optic cables to give us the level of internet penetration that we have today was started by the NDC. And people know these things. You see, it was largely because of propaganda. If people were not conscious of these things, I don't think all the droves of people running to receive, to welcome, to engage and listen to Mr. Mahama, why would they bother? We were told that we were not eating roads. If you remember, at the peak of the campaign, Today we are being told that some people in office say that they've constructed the most roads in Ghana. Why? What has changed? We still don't eat roads, do we? But at least if the road is more trouble, you will know. And we travel a lot, a great deal, and by road, so we know. Even where funds were secured for projects, what have they done? They will try to take credit. I listened to the president speak at the renaming of the Ameri plant in Kumasi, for example. You see, it is also sad that our leaders don't even exhibit the sort of maturity that we expect to see, where you can give credit. Look, you know, we criticize Mr. Mahama a lot for this plant, but you see, it has become the mainstay, and today is coming to secure better power distribution in the Ashanti region to serve the northern parts of the country. What does it take away from you?
Let me play the devil's advocate and say that even with the presence of the Green Book, and we all know of the Green Book, everybody knows that the Green Book...
You've all been to the port of Tema.
We all know of the Green Book.
You've been to the port of Takrady.
But there are still times where, and I'll tell you my personal experience.
You've seen the E-blocks across the country.
Let me give you my personal experience. So, I think a couple of, maybe a year or two ago, I had personal drama that required that instantly I had to transport a relative of mine from the University of Ghana, you know, a medical facility, you know, somewhere else. He needed to be on dialysis within 10 minutes. So, you know, that was drama instantly happening, you know, in my face. Had to make calls, had to run around trying to find a dialysis, you know, a place that we could get dialysis within 10 minutes. We ended up at the Maritime Hospital. I think I've told the story a couple of times. Maritime Hospital in Tema, you know, that's where eventually we ended up, and he was, you know, catered for. And when everything was over, I remember somebody drawing my attention to the fact that in the chain of 3 or 4 hospitals, where eventually this relative of mine got the needed medical assistance that he needed, all 4 hospitals were constructed under, you know, John Mahama's, you know, during his administration. He did, you know, those constructions. And I did not know. Even me, and I'm saying even me with capital letters, I simply did not know. There are Ghanaians who have engaged the Green Book. I have engaged the Green Book. I have, you know, as part of what I do, even in my personal capacity. But I also did not know. You know, even because of what I do, the work that I do, I should know, right? And so I dare say that yes, the Green Book exists. It does. You know, yes, we engage with the Green Book, but sometimes it takes 1 or 2 personal experiences for you to sort of come face to face with what was done. And every now and then we are just amazed. Ah, he did this, he did that. How... I'm struggling with how to ask this question, you know, properly. But how does the campaign intend
to correct that anomaly?
To correct that and bring it to the fore, you know, so we realize how we are experiencing him a little more than we have, even with this situation.
Can I just try to surmise a response, right? Look, Amma, you gave a very good example of the Maritime Hospital in Tema.
Right.
I was a Deputy Transport Minister for 4 years, right? I had heard about this construction taking place. I didn't even know it was complete. If you ask me when that project was even commissioned, I can't tell you, so I had no idea. But funny enough, you know, my son has this metal rod in his knee. And the eve before we were to leave the country for him to go and have it refitted because it was giving him problems through airports and all that, so they had recommended we change the metal. The lockdown in the first period was just about a day before our flights. So we realized we couldn't leave the country anymore. So we had no options but to look for a place where this could be done. We got a very great recommendation of a doctor, an orthopedic surgeon, one of the very finest in Ghana. And then he says, oh, but you know, the only theater where this thing can be done will be at the Maritime Hospital. So I'll have to go and pay for the theater, and then you can come there. We actually paid to use the Maritime Hospital, to use a specific theater because it had the right equipment for that procedure to be done within the time frame that we needed it done. Fortunately, my son's classmate's mother is an anesthesiologist, so she came all the way there to do the anesthesia and all of that. So yes, it happened for all of us. But the question you should be asking is, the question is why? The building is not hidden. It is a very large edifice which serves a large number of persons within the Tema catchment area. You know, look within. It has to do with propaganda, one. Two, a certain hold that I think sometimes blinds the media even to some of these things. Thirdly, because of the look, the MPP led by Akufo-Addo and Bawumia really demonized the NDC to the point where it even literally created this film. Everything positive they managed to taint with some level of corruption. Don't forget. Why? Ghanaians were even angry about the Ford navigation issue. And the dirty parts of that story came up about whether or not there was money in that navigator. Since you have known Mr. Mahama, have you ever seen him driving any of those kind of humongous vehicles around town? No. In any case, today Akufo-Addo is president. Can he tell us that nobody has brought him a gift of any such import or value that he didn't want or probably didn't even desire? You'll be surprised at things that people give either to a president, former president, certain president, name it. It's, you know, these things happen. It's why I love what the Americans do. They have a threshold. If you receive a gift as president above this value, you declare it to the state. It becomes the state's property. We are trying to get there. We haven't gotten there yet. I ask a question all the time. But for social media, where will the NDC's campaign be? The boss scandal, but for social media, where will it be? The cash for seats issue, but for social media, where will it be? The attempt even to have the finance minister removed, but for social media, where will it be? How often have you heard the sustained corruption conversations today as we had in the past, but for social media? Someone says,
are you slicing those of us in the main media?
I haven't mentioned names.
Are you slicing
someone
those of
says
us in the
that
media?
the corruption stories are too many or there's too much of it. So people have gotten tired. How is that possible? Have you not heard about the current increments in fuel and petroleum products? Every other day there's an increment. Where are those large, long, arduous criticisms that used to come on every radio set that you and I came across? Where is the noise? There is more corruption today than at any other time in the history of this country. We even have a proposal for a port in Keta, where there is no port, yet there's a whole DG. This is how bad things are. Why?
But
the same Manasseh is the one who carried that Ford navigation story.
No, but how do you
He carried the Jida story. Why is it that today, the SML one, where is it?
How do you hope to counter? Because
that is why I said
we are going into an election.
It is why the reason you now know about the Maritime Hospital is because of social media. That is where we have our strongest point. So we are using it to the best of our ability. The mainstream media will come on every now and then. Take the newspapers sometimes and look at them. You wonder if there's a syndication about some of the stories that are there. Send the story about government corruption to anybody who is even your friend in the media and see. Do you know that there are media people who are raising issues to do with corruption in this government and they are being attacked and reassigned? Do you know that? The question is, why are they not making noise as they used to? Everything that we experience under the NDC or Mr. Mahama is 10 times worse today. The IMF, have they not gone to the IMF? Are they not currently under an IMF program? Did they not campaign on never going to the IMF? Where are all the questions? Where are the editorials, long, winding, highfalutin editorials? Where are they? Where are the long queues of people who were demonstrating against them? So, I say something. Mr. Mama was not in anybody's house. So he himself was experiencing them. So, and because of where he was seated, he wouldn't dare even turn on his generator. Because if your next door neighbor's house is dark because there's a power outage, how can you, the leader of the country, have your genset on? So most of the time he was cooped up in the Flagstaff house. This is how bad things were. I think that Mahama and the NDC were treated very, very unfairly. That's when I believe it. It is even thanks to God that there's been a certain modicum of recognition of the fact that there was a lot of propaganda, a lot of falsehoods. You know, I think in many ways people actually, I don't know, maybe they thought that Nana had contested for so many times and had not been successful. And so maybe it was time to give him a chance. And so people bent over backwards. Whatever he asked for, he got. Whatever he said, people believed. However he wanted it, people took it. He threw tantrums that were mostly fake and false. People took them. And people swallowed all those things, hook, line, and sinker. On all those things they promised, they've gone back 100 times over. But check the level of criticism and how much noise is in the society. So yes, on our listening tours, we've heard from many good people of Ghana, people from all walks of life. We've heard all the stories, the harrowing experiences. We've picked up on all that is not right with our society. If there's anybody who would lead Ghana to the next level, to stabilize our economy, to build back, to improve growth, I think that is Mr. Mahama. But you see, don't expect that he will lie to you. Don't expect that he will boast and brag. Don't expect that he will run roughshod over other people just because he wants to be president. And remember also that democracy is also about the humility to know that you've lost an election and that you ought to hand over. And that if people were not handing over, there's no way Akufo-Addo will be president.
I'm happy you take us there. I'm happy you take us there. I mean, there's conversation now around don't take it for granted that you would win because times are hard. Ghana's economy is experiencing its worst times. You know, that's not me saying. All indications prove that, right? But then there's caution that don't expect that just because times are hard, don't think that just because the Ghanaian is crying and suffering that, you know, automatically then the NDC would just, you know, ride on that to win. What would you say to that? Because that's like a big criticism, you know, of the politicking or the lack thereof of the NDC's campaign presently.
Look, the NDC doesn't take anything for granted. They never have, they never will. You've seen our leaders over the last 2 years crisscrossing the length and breadth of this country. Mr. Mahama on the listening tour, Dinasi Edun Ketia at every function you can possibly think of, every festival, every funeral. Professor Nana Jane has had her very fair share of festivals, of programs, of funerals, of all sorts of engagements you can possibly think of. Same with the former First Lady and most of our party functionaries and executives. I don't remember the last time I spent a weekend fully in Accra for every small function that us small minions can also participate in, all in a bid to sell our message, to promote our message, to allow people to get a feel of what the NDC has to offer. And people have now realized that the NDC actually has a way that it shows that it cares. I mean, all of us put together, day in, day out. Compare the current crop of MPP to when they were in opposition. Cast your mind back very quickly. You see, sometimes we don't even remember the little whiffs of corruption. I have come under a lot of attacks lately. And one of the attacks was about Bas Brand and all of that. Why? They have deputy ministers amongst themselves. How many of them are taking decisions that affect the ministries where they operate? But you see, when they have nothing else to do, what do? In any case, put the whole value of that corruption to do with Bas Branding together. The list of the stories about corruption in the MPP is nowhere near that small amount. In fact, you ask yourself today, look at the swift action Mr. Mahama took. Our own Attorney General came up with a report, made comparative analysis of various bus companies that will undertake similar jobs. We were told that the fanciest bus company creating these sorts of, pictures on these buses would have cost even more. But the least of them was the one that was in the middle. They got even the contractor to repay to the state. In terms of JIDA, it was the same. In terms of SADA, it was the same. In any case, Mr. Mahama had individuals, just like they do, working in these institutions. He wasn't there himself. Juxtapose that as against what we have today. Every project, 80% of government projects have been single sourced. Not 10%, not 20%, not 30%, 80%. Of all the stories to do with corruption that have been exposed over the last 8 years, which one have they taken? Look at the stealing. Ama, shut your eyes for a few minutes and imagine that the money found in the past room, half of it were found in your room or mine. Baz branding at the time, 3.5 million Ghana cedis was just almost $1 million. Look at the swift action Mr. Mahama took. Look at the serious view he took of it. One of our most popular ministers, may he so rest in peace, resigned, and that's when Fifi Kwete became transport minister. I didn't even get a promotion. That is how leaders take responsibility. Regrettable as that may sound. But he did it. So, it is not about quantum. Sometimes it's even about the action you take. In terms of JIDA, if you remember, colleagues of Mr. Mahama's were even tried and sentenced in his own government, on his own watch.
What would be your, and this will probably be one of my last questions to you, what would be your reaction to the Barney Champon video of "We will not hand over power"? I'm asking this question because some people have said it's simply him saying we will win. Some have said it's him saying we are going to use ways and means. What would be your reaction? You, not anybody, you. What's your reaction, to that tape? And he said this, 2 or 3 times already?
Yeah. Well, but that's what I mean. Those who should be making the loudest noises are not saying anything. If I had gone and said something like that, even people within the NDC will call on Mr. Mahama to sack me. I remember Dufo had a security detail in the heat of the campaign. And when some funny falsehoods were put out there about me making some very bigoted statements, and anybody who knows me knows I'll never make, he actually wrote a whole statement asking that I be sacked because, of course, just because of your proximity even to Mr. Mahama. I keep telling people, look, my arrival on the scene for the NDC, if it's even had any negatives, the positives far outweigh the negatives. I call myself an ambassador for everything NDC. And I carry it very positively and very seriously. And I think I've made quite an impact of sorts. I don't occupy any position of anything in the NDC. Not on any committee, I don't chair, nothing. I just do whatever is available to be done with whatever it is I have at my disposal. But I love my boss, and I serve him to the best of my ability. And I do it in all humility and with the diligence that I apply to everything that I do. But just imagine that a third of that amount were found in my possession. It will be the NDC. It won't be, in fact, long before it gets outside. So you see, there's also something about the NDC that I love. We checkmate even ourselves from within. And woe betide you if you run into that sort of trouble. Know that Mr. Mahama is not going to come and say, oh, Joyce is my daughter, so this and this and that. No. Even as we all work with, I tell people all the time. I don't think that if I do something and I get a bad headline, he'll call me and talk about it. If I do something and it's good, he'll call me and he'll talk about it. If he wants me to do something and do it a certain way, he will tell me directly how he wants it done. If I moan too much about anything, he'll be the first to tell me off. So there's always some quid pro quo. In stricto senses, there's a way that people must work for the state. There must be a certain level of fidelity to the state. There should be a certain principle when you work for the state. And when you are a government appointee or minister, it is a huge responsibility. There's 31 million of us. And it's not because you are the brightest or the best sometimes. Maybe you're just the most partisan. So you must be careful and mindful what you say and how you say it. But you see, there's a lot of recklessness in the MPP. Largely because the leaders themselves have not shown a very good example. They have not led by example. They have not said the things that they believe. They haven't led the country as they should. So why not? They've stolen so much. It is in their interest to boast and brag about why they will hold on to power. Because they are added them in their stealing. When have you heard any senior member of the MPP come out and condemn any of these young people for their utterances, for their recklessness, for all the corruption? They try to protect each other largely. You rub my hand, I rub your back. That's what they are doing. Led by their own boss, who would come out and clear them day in, day out. Like I said, even in the wake of Bas Brandon, I didn't get a promotion.
Ejuso, will the NDC field the candidates?
Well, you know, these are not matters that are within my purview.
What do you think?
You know.
What do you think?
Well, you know, I haven't actually even given it a lot of thought.
Right.
You know, I mean, I just think that, look, take it on a personal level. Let's leave the law for a few minutes. It broke my heart that a very young man like John Kuma, in his prime, his life cut short, and all it was about who replaces him. My heart still bleeds for his passing. That is my very personal perspective of that whole circumstance. And if it was anybody, even in the NDC, I'd feel the same. Ama, I miss the blushing brides. I miss the grieving widows. I wish we still lived in that era where people mourned more than wait to take the spoils or remnants of what you've left behind. I wondered what his family, his immediate family, those affected the most by his passing, how would they be feeling?
Watching the scramble for his position.
My father has been dead probably for almost 30 years. There are times on a day like today when I get very emotional that I wish that he had lived to see us today. So for me, losing a person very close to you is a very painful experience. It never leaves you. So I look beyond all the things going on around the passing of a guy like John Kuma, brilliant guy. I just think that we need to rethink some of these things and reconsider how we handle matters under such circumstances. But whether the NDC is going to field the candidate or not, I mean, those ones, I believe that the General Secretary, the leader of the party, and many other people are better placed to speak to these issues than I would ever be. But
I appreciate your input.
Yes.
I appreciate it. And again, it's one of the reasons why, you know, we look to you. It's my personal sentiment too. Just watching the couple, you know, the politicking, and it was characterized by violence.
As if we're waiting for you to drop dead.
You know, he just died.
I wish he could see his back and
he just died.
See what actually happened in the aftermath of his very unfortunate demise. But hey, that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
My last question to you was going to be whether you think the NDC is going to win, but I think I know my answer.
Oh, we've won already. I mean, look, God being our helper.
Right.
I always say Ghana deserves better. We deserve a very, very capable pair of hands. We deserve certainty. We deserve sincerity. We deserve credibility. We also deserve some experience. And I think that the noise is too much. We need a calmer space where we work for equity, we work for justice, and we work for fairness. If there's any individual at this time who can take us out of these doldrums into a certain modicum of hope, I am convinced that that person is John Mahama. And you know, I keep telling him, oh, this one you say you're going to do, if you don't do, even I will checkmate you. And then we all laugh and we move on. But that is the truth. That's how I feel. And you know that no government is perfect. Nobody elects anybody, MP, whatever, because we think you are perfect. No. We just expect that you will deal very fairly with the people who elect you. You will deal honestly with the people who elect you. That you'll be genuine and factual with them. But when you have so many people literally robbing the state of what little resources it has, I think that is unacceptable. That is wrong. And I don't expect that such a person will be kept in office. Look, any attempt to vote for Dr. Bawumia is an extension of Nana Addo's term. Bawumia can never ever leave the shadows of President Akufo-Addo. Everything he is was born out of President Akufo-Addo. Every reason why President Akufo-Addo also took him has all fallen flat and failed. So even on his scorecard, like someone said, you can only score him 0. You see, he can't even campaign. It is why I know that we need to be vigilant. The NDC must be very, very vigilant. Since he became flag bearer, you've said, where does he go to? What does he do? How is he expecting to win an election like this? 16 regions. I keep asking, what is the NPP flag bearer doing? I didn't even see him in Ejisu campaigning for anybody. Or because the NDC didn't have any, it was an internal primary. But where was the flag bearer? They definitely have something negative up their sleeves. And so the NDC must be very, very vigilant. And I know that we are very vigilant. We are working towards vigilance. We are working to ensure vigilance. We're also working to ensure that whatever dubious activities they have will not wash. And God himself still works in the affairs of men. That one, I believe it.
Absolutely. I said it was my last question. I take it back. Today, I like to be the devil's advocate. So last one. I've heard a video where somebody was saying categorically that don't vote for somebody who has nothing to lose. That once, President Mahama is done with his 4 years, he won't come back to ask you for your vote. That you don't vote for somebody who has nothing to lose. And this is coming up as a very strong criticism of this, of the candidates of ex-President John Dramani Mahama. What will be his counter? What do you think, about this? Because it's coming up very, very strong.
Can I tell you something? The NDC is the most successful political party we have in Ghana. It is in the NDC's interest to remain relevant. You understand? It's in the NDC's interest because they have the interest of the good people of Ghana at heart to remain relevant, to achieve political success, because they care more for the Ghanaian than for the MPP and any other person who doesn't. I also believe strongly that it is in Mr. Mahama's interest as part of his legacy to leave behind a formidable, phenomenal and successful political party. And it is in that interest. Why? President Kufuor is not campaigning for the MPP. Why? What is in it for him? Is he going to move into Jubilee House? Is he going to come and sit and be Dr. Bawumia's running mate? Did you hear the statement he made on the eve of that visionless statement? To be honest, even I was literally very disappointed. But I understood. It's all about interest. On that occasion, it was about the MPP's interest. What were you expecting him to say or do? The same vein, Mr. Mahama, even on his retirement, will be one of our main leaders. It will be in his interest to see that the party remains relevant, successful, and imposes its own interests in whatever form. So make no mistake. What happens to the NDC matters to Mr. Mahama.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's always a delight, always a pleasure to share the same space, with the my madam, Joyce Muktari, on a day such as this.
Chief Executive of Pan-African Television.
Thank you.
Pan-African,
and
not
congratulations.
Pan-African.
Congratulations.
I take up.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has
Make sure you finish that course.
I will.
Thank you. Next year when we come here, we're coming straight from your graduation. Good luck.
I'm sorry. Every now and then when I meet D. Joyce Muktari, I get, overly excited. I'm sure you know why. I'm sure you know why I get so excited when, I get to sit with her. But I think today we've dealt with some very, pertinent issues. I have tried my best, to hit on all of the hard questions. I hope you got your answers. Do, send your feedback through the comments. She's very happy and ready to come back. If there was anything that we missed, she'll come back and address them. Election 2024 is just a few, months away. I beg of you to stay as vigilant as you can, to engage with the issues as much as you can. We will make Ghana better. See you tomorrow. Bye.